You might look at me and think, Asian boy, good grades, probably loves learning and education, and probably studies really, really hard. But this could not be further from the truth. It was back in year 11 when I sat down and started reflecting on myself. Why was it that I was spending almost half of all my working hours doing just one singular activity? That is, studying. Think about it, you're spending 6 hours each day during school. And then when you get home, you might spend a couple more hours just studying the content you learnt in school that day, or do a bit of additional study because you're pressured into doing it. And this equates to about half of all the time that you're actually spending awake. So is spending all this time really worth half of all the time that you have as an adolescent doing just one simple task, which is studying? To be honest, after thinking about this, I'd become quite demotivated in year 11 and leading on to year 12 and in university because I no longer felt there was enough reason to justify me spending half of all my time just studying for exams and doing well in them. So I no longer had that incentive to just study to get those good marks to impress my parents and also just because I wanted to do it. Later on, in year 12 and for most of university, I was pretty much just fueled by extrinsic motivation. And that came in the form of achieving academic scholarships to get into uni and later on maintaining those academic requirements when I was in uni and making sure I satisfied the grade requirements. It also might be useful just for some future job prospects, especially if those industries are very competitive, which is what I'm looking to get into, and making sure I have the WAM or grades that are high enough to be able to get accepted past the screening stage. This is why I've pretty much adopted what I like to call the academic hacker mindset, which pretty much focuses on those extrinsic factors that should be motivating you, such as doing well to maintain a scholarship or get a scholarship or to get into your dream job, rather than just for the sake of studying because you're kind of being pressured into by everyone around you, your teachers, your friends, and your families. There are 3 main reasons why I've adopted this mindset. The first one is pretty much just that most of the knowledge that you actually learn is a waste and isn't useful at all. For example, I remember back in geography, back in subjects like biology, even though that might be something you might be interested in, for me, I personally had no interest in that subject. So why was it that I needed to learn that the mitochondria was the powerhouse of the cell? This particularly interesting fact was not actually useful in the future, even though I did have to memorize that for the exam. And why was I learning about Pangaea rock formations and sedimentary metamorphosis and all these different types of rocks that I particularly had no genuine interest in? And I've never actually going to apply this in my future work or in my future life in general. At least I don't think so. Even if you are probably learning things that you think are going to be relevant for your degree, for me, I'm doing an engineering degree. Even our lecturers have told us that only 5 to 10% of that knowledge is actually going to be applicable to whatever job you're doing in the future. So why on earth are we learning that other 90%, committing it to our memories, applying those practice questions, and doing them in exams? The second problem that I feel exists is the fallacies with just the system in general. So when it comes to studying for exams, a lot of people maintain this mindset, and what they do is make notes on the content that they've learned in class, write this stuff down, look through it, memorize it, and then when the final exam comes, just regurgitate all that information onto your exam paper and hopefully get as many marks as you can. And then after the exam is over, probably 1 week later or 2 weeks later, you've probably forgot most of that content already because you're never actually going to be using it and you never actually were interested in that subject, particularly in the first place. For me, unfortunately, I've pretty much forgotten everything that I learned in chemistry class and even in university courses where I was learning subjects I had no interest in, such as mechanical properties of materials. These I didn't really care about at all, and it was really just felt like to me I was just memorizing it and then writing it in the exam and then forgetting about it completely after. So I don't see what the point of learning that stuff in the first place really was. Furthermore, in the real world, when you're actually working, let's say in an engineering role, of course some of this information might be useful, but in the day and age where we're living in at the moment, there's technology present everywhere. For example, when I was working in a company where I had to do some coding, I didn't really depend on the coding principles that I'd been taught and learned in my first year and second year. Rather, all that syntax, all that learning really came about when I was in that workplace and doing that work then and there. So what I mean by this is when I was stuck on a piece of code that I didn't know how to do, I wasn't really looking through my notes back in first year and second year. Instead, I was just using Google search and finding solutions on the internet, in this case using Stack Overflow. So for me, I feel like the school educational system and in universities as well, the way they use to test people is not really on their actual abilities. Rather, it's just based on their effort and willingness to memorize random information, put that all in their heads, regurgitate it on a piece of paper, and then give them a mark out of 100 to place them in order. So this doesn't teach you any actual useful skills that you're likely to need in the workplace, which I feel for me is actually to be able to learn things myself and figure things out without a lot of help, especially when I'm stuck on a very challenging and difficult problem and I can't rely on the people around us or just blindly and stupidly memorizing things. The third reason why I don't like the study mentality that schools and universities later on impose upon us is because of the opportunity cost of the time that you're spending studying. Because studying and studying well actually requires quite a lot of time, it leaves less time for you to actually do the things that you enjoy in life. For example, maybe playing sports, which builds essential skills such as teamwork and personal fitness, or even in other cases where you might want to do your personal hobbies or learn other important life skills such as maybe coding, how to start a small business of your own, or just personal development skills such as speech and communication. For example, one thing that I really regret not learning earlier was how to navigate the tax systems of Australia. So for me, I never really knew how tax worked, and it was only until I started working and started having to pay for it myself that I thought, oh wow, I should have known this a long time ago. It's actually super useful and way more than learning about whatever was being taught back in biology. Also, one thing I realized when I started to go in the workplace, do some internships and that kind of stuff, I realized that it wasn't actually uni where I was learning most of my knowledge and improving myself. It was actually in the workplace where I encountered challenges and difficulties, and having to navigate past those challenges myself, or possibly with the support of a supervisor, I found myself actually learning a lot more. And in this case, they were actually paying me to do this work rather than me paying the university to actually get some education, which I feel is quite outdated. So definitely work experience I feel is a lot more important than just studying for exams and memorizing university knowledge and content. So the reason why I just wanted to sit down and talk to you about these things today was because this is actually the reason why I made this channel in the first place. The goal of this channel is just to share my study mentality, which is that studying and studying especially for exams isn't actually efficient and doesn't assess our abilities properly and doesn't actually help us achieve better things that we can apply later on in the workplace. This also will help you save more time doing the things that you actually enjoy by using these kind of academic hacks to save you guys a lot of time when it comes to studying, but still maintain those good grades, which is just what you actually require to get whatever you need in the future, whether that be scholarships or a very competitive job opportunity. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure you give it a big thumbs up and also subscribe to this channel to not miss out on my future study tips and tricks that will help you save more time when it comes to studying for exams. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think of our study and educational system and whether you think it's actually a worthwhile investment of all the time that you're spending to do this study and learning stuff in school and in university. As always, take care and I hope to see you guys in the next video.